Dust Creek wasn't much more than a crooked saloon, a broken church bell, and a street where tumbleweeds outnumbered people. But for Clara May Whitley, it was the last stop before desperation turned to something darker. At just 19, Clara was the prettiest girl in town and the poorest too. Her mama died from the fever to winter's back, and her daddy, well, he drank himself into a grave trying to forget. Since then, Clara cleaned rooms at Miss Lulu's Inn, took hand-me-downs, and prayed every Sunday for a miracle. The miracle came, but it wore spurs, smelled of tobacco, and was old enough to be her father. Clyde Branson, 62, gray as desert dust, owned half of Dust Creek and most of the cattle between there and Rio Blanco. A former gunslinger turned cattleman, he'd buried 2 wives and had no children. Folks said he was too mean for love and too rich to die. But Clyde had seen Clara scrubbing floors with dirt on her cheek and fire in her eyes. Something about her grit made him tip his hat and leave a silver dollar by her bucket every time. Then one day, he came to her with a proposition, not roses, not letters, just a straight offer. "Marry me," he said. "You'll have a roof, silk dresses, steak on Sundays, and never work again a day in your life. In return, you smile when folks ask, and you don't cross me." Clara knew it wasn't love. She didn't even try to pretend. But she'd grown tired of hunger, tired of being passed over, tired of dreaming while scrubbing other people's dirt. So she agreed. The wedding was quick and quiet, with the preacher shaking his head and the saloon crowd whispering behind their glasses. Clara wore a pale blue dress that didn't fit quite right. Clyde wore his old cattleman's coat and a pistol at his side. Even at the altar, after the ceremony, he lifted her onto his horse like a sack of grain, and they rode out to Branson Ranch, 40 miles of dust, cows, and silence. Clara was now a bride, but not the kind that got love poems. She was a transaction. But what neither Clyde nor Clara knew then was that the deal would change more than their lives. It would stir secrets buried deep in the desert, test the meaning of loyalty, and awaken something in Clara far stronger than greed, the will to live on her own terms. The first time Clara May stepped into Branson Ranch, it felt less like a home and more like a cold museum of someone else's life. The house was big by Dust Creek standards to stories, with a wraparound porch and a view that stretched all the way to the blood-red hills. But it was filled with silence. No laughter, no warmth, just walls covered in old cattle brands, dusty photographs, and the heavy scent of tobacco. Clyde gave her the grand tour with a voice as dry as the prairie. "Kitchens, yours if you want it. Rooms upstairs, don't go into the back room. That one's mine." She nodded. She'd heard tales about locked rooms and past wives, of Clyde's old life as a gunman who never missed. But Clara didn't ask questions. She wasn't brought here to ask. She was here to be seen, not heard. At supper, Clyde devoured his steak in silence, never lifting his eyes from his plate. Clara ate quietly, her knife trembling slightly in her hand. Her stomach was full for the first time in days, but her heart felt hollow when the meal ended. Clyde pushed his chair back, rose slowly, and muttered, "You'll sleep in the front room. You got your own bed. I don't expect nothin'. You do your part, and we'll get along." That night, Clara lay on clean cotton sheets in a room that smelled faintly of lavender and loneliness. She stared up at the wooden ceiling beams, listening to the wind creak the boards, wondering if she'd made a deal with the devil. But then she remembered her old life scrubbing floors till her knees bled. Men tossing coins at her like she was less than dirt. No, this wasn't love, but it was a step up. And she told herself she'd find comfort and safety, even if it came wrapped in silence. Days at Branson Ranch moved like shadows at sunset, slow, long, and heavy. Clara didn't have chores unless she wanted them, but she took them anyway. She baked bread, swept the porch, and learned how to ride the ranch's gentlest mare, Daisy. Sometimes, Clyde would watch her from the barn with unreadable eyes. He'd give a small nod, almost approving, and then vanish into the back room. He never let her near. That room haunted her. Once, while dusting the hallway, she reached for the doorknob, just to see if it was locked. It was, solid as iron, and just as cold. Clara began to wonder if the room held more than memories, secrets, maybe a past Clyde couldn't bury. One morning, a rider came, a thin man with slick hair and a gold tooth. He dismounted with a smirk and tipped his hat at Clara. "Name's Ellis Trent," he said, voice like snakeskin. "Tell your husband I'm here on business." Clara called for Clyde, and when he came out, something dark passed between the two men. "Thought I told you not to come round here no more," Clyde growled. Ellis smiled like a fox. "And yet, here I am." They talked in hushed tones near the barn, far from Clara's ears. But later that night, she noticed Clyde's hands shaking as he lit his cigar. He didn't eat, didn't speak, just stared into the fire like it might swallow him whole. Weeks passed, and Clara began noticing changes. Letters hidden in drawers, a map that disappeared from the dining room wall, horses saddled at odd hours. Clyde was preparing for something, or someone. One evening, while folding linens in the hallway, Clara heard him in the back room, whispering, not prayers, not names, but numbers. She pressed her ear to the door. 12 crates. Tonight's, he can't know. Then a thud. Silence. Clara backed away before the door creaked open. Clyde stood there, surprised but not angry. "You been snooping?" She swallowed. "No, sir." He studied her a long moment, then nodded once. "Good. Some doors best stay shut." But Clara knew something had changed. The locked door wasn't just wood and hinges, it was a warning. That night, sleep didn't come easy. She lay there thinking about the money, the silence, and the man she'd married for comfort, who now spoke in whispers to ghosts. The easy life she thought she'd bought might come with a price far heavier than poverty. Clara didn't love Clyde, but she didn't hate him either. In a strange way, she pitied him. He wasn't cruel, just hollowed out by years' loss, and secrets buried too deep to dig up without bleeding. And now, she was tangled in it, whether she liked it or not. One morning, Clyde surprised her. "You ever shoot?" he asked, handing her a rifle. Clara blinked. "No, sir. Time you learned," he said. "Things out there ain't always friendly. Money can't protect you from a bullet." She held the rifle with trembling hands as he showed her how to aim, how to breathe, how to squeeze the trigger. The sound cracked through the air, echoing over the plains. Something told Clara that shot was only the first of many to come. Clara May woke before the rooster that morning, startled by the sound of hooves in the distance. She slipped from her bed, wrapped her shawl tight, and peered through the window. A lone rider was retreating into the haze of dawn, kicking up dust. Behind him. It wasn't Clyde. By the time she entered the kitchen, Clyde was already dressed, his boots muddy and his pistol belt strapped tight around his waist. He didn't greet her. He just poured a cup of coffee and sat in silence. Clara noticed. The map was back on the wall, but it was marked now. Red ink circled a spot labeled Coyote Gulch. She dared to speak. "Is there trouble, Clyde?" He didn't look up. "Depends on who you ask." "Is it that man, Ellis?" Clyde finally raised his eyes. They were pale gray, like bleached bone. "He's not a man. He's a vulture, circling, waiting for me to fall." Clara didn't press further. She didn't need to. Her gut told her something was building like thunder clouds on a hot day. Later that afternoon, Clyde handed her a key to the pantry. He said, "You'll find tins, jerky, flour. Keep it stocked." But when she turned the key, the door led not just to shelves of supplies but a trapdoor beneath an old rug. Clyde hadn't said anything about that night. While Clyde slept in his armchair by the fire hat pulled down over his eyes and rifle across his lap, Clara crept to the pantry. She lifted the rug, opened the trapdoor. A wooden ladder led down into blackness. She descended slowly, lantern in hand. What she found wasn't what she expected. A small underground room, cool, dry, and lined with crates, dynamite, ammunition, bottles of whiskey, and in the corner, a leather satchel bulging with cash, thousands of dollars. She nearly dropped the lantern, but it wasn't just the money that shook her. It was the wanted poster nailed to the wall. Ellis Trent, $3,000 dead or alive. Bank, robbery, smuggling, murder, and next to it, a torn one with Clyde Branson's name half scratched out. Her stomach turned. The next morning, Clara stirred the eggs slowly in the skillet, trying to act normal, but her mind raced. Clyde was no simple cattleman. He was hiding from something or someone, and she was now living on top of an arsenal. She needed answers. Clyde, she asked carefully, how long you known Ellis? He didn't flinch. Long enough to regret it. You were partners once, smugglers, whiskey, guns, gold. Before I bought this land and tried to clean my hands. Clara's grip tightened on the skillet handle. You stopped. But he didn't. No, Clyde said. He's been dragging my name through dust ever since. Wants to pull me back and wants what's mine. She thought of the trapdoor, the money, the map, the locked room. You planning to fight him? Clyde stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out over the grazing land. If he forces me to, I'll bury him myself. That night, the sky cracked open with lightning. Clara couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, heart thumping like war drums. Around midnight, she heard it scratching from the back room. Not footsteps, not creaks, scratching. She stepped into the hall, barefoot, carrying a lantern. The door to the forbidden room was slightly ajar. Her breath caught. She pushed it open. Inside was a room choked in shadows. Old portraits on the wall, dusty shelves, and in the center, a rocking chair, rocking on its own. Clara stepped closer. On the table beside it, an old photograph. A younger Clyde standing beside Ellis Trent, both smiling. Between them, a woman, Clara's. Breath caught. The woman in the photo looked just like her. Same dark hair, same chin, same eyes. But this photo was dated 20 years ago and scrawled on the back, in fading ink, for Clara someday, you'll meet her. Clara sat at the edge of the old rocking chair, staring at the photograph as if it might speak. Her heart thudded against her ribs, louder than the thunder outside. The inked message on the back of the photo made her blood run cold. For Clara someday, you'll meet her. She didn't know what haunted her more, the name written in familiar script, or the woman's face that mirrored her own like a ghost's reflection in water. Clara turned toward the creaking door. The house was silent again, except for the wind rattling the shutters. She crept back to her room, photo clutched tight in hand. Sleep didn't come, just questions. Who was this woman? Clyde had never mentioned a daughter, or a woman named Clara. Was it his late wife, a sister, or something more twisted? At breakfast, Clyde was quiet, more so than usual. He looked older that morning, as if the years had finally caught up to him overnight. Clara tried to play it calm. Storm kept me up, she said casually. Had me walking the halls. Clyde didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee. Then he said, did you open the back room? Her hands froze around the teacup. She met his eyes. Yes, he let out a slow breath. Figured you would, sooner or later. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. About the woman who looked like me. About the photo. Clyde leaned back in his chair, face tight with something between sorrow and shame. She was my daughter. Clara blinked. Your daughter. Her name was Clara, too, he said, quietly, named after my ma. She was bright, stubborn, had your fire, your eyes. She died when she was just 17. Caught in a shootout I wasn't supposed to be part of. Ellis was there. He ran. I stayed. Buried her myself. Clara swallowed. And the message, someday. You'll meet her. That was her mama's handwriting. My first wife. She believed in signs, dreams. Said one day, someone would come along who looked like our Clara. And maybe I'd get a second chance. Clara's voice trembled. A second chance to do what? Clyde looked down at his calloused hands. To protect her, this time. Later that day, Clyde disappeared down the trail, saying he was going to the East Ridge to check the water lines. But Clara knew better. He was riding to prepare for Ellis, left alone. She went back to the trapdoor. She needed to understand what she was part of. She searched every crate, every dusty ledger, every folded map. Then, hidden in the bottom of a whiskey barrel, she found a leather notebook. Inside were plans, diagrams, lists of names, Ellis's gang, trade routes, delivery points, and something else, a sketched blueprint of Branson Ranch with escape tunnels marked under the barn, and leading out to the dry canyon past the gulch. Clara realized what Clyde had done. He hadn't gone straight. He'd just gotten smarter, hidden the business deeper, tied up loose ends quietly. And now, she was part of his cover, his legacy. His weakness. That night, Clara sat on the porch, staring at the distant hills, the wind lifting her hair. She thought of her old life, the poor girl scrubbing floors, praying for a miracle. She thought of the deal she'd made, marrying an old cowboy for money and ease. She hadn't known then that ease comes at a cost. But now she had something worth fighting for: truth, independence, even justice. If Clyde was going to war with Ellis, she wouldn't be a quiet wife, waiting on the porch. She'd fight to not for love, not for the man, but for herself, for the woman in the photograph. For the name they both carried. Clara. Clyde returned after sunset, horse-lathered and eyes sharp like a man who's seen ghosts walking. His boots were caked with red dust, and his shirt was stained with sweat and regret. Clara met him at the porch with a rifle in her hands, not pointing, not shaking, just steady. I know everything, she said calmly. Clyde paused, brow furrowed. Everything, she nodded. The trapdoor, the tunnels, the map, the money, and your daughter Clara before me. He let out a long sigh and walked past her into the house, setting his hat down on the table. Wasn't supposed to get this far, but it has, she replied, following him inside. You said you brought me here for comfort, but you brought me into a war. Clyde sat down slowly. Didn't mean to. You were supposed to live soft, have safety, never see that part of me. Clara leaned the rifle against the wall and stood across from him. That part of you is the only one that's still breathing. You can't outrun what you are, Clyde. But maybe you can fight for something better. He looked at her with something new in his eyes, not command, not expectation, but respect. You ain't just some girl looking for an easy life, are you? Clara smiled sadly. I was, but the easy life ain't real. Not for folks like us. The next morning, Clyde began teaching her how to shoot proper. Not just point and fire. He showed her how to aim in the wind, how to shoot from horseback, and how to reload without looking. You gotta move like the bullet already left, he told her. Firing at tin cans from the back fence, Clara practiced until her shoulder was sore and her hands blistered. She refused to quit. I won't be useless, she told him. You never were, Clyde muttered. At night, they mapped out escape routes through the tunnels, planned who would ride where if things went bad. Clara memorized every twist beneath the ranch and how to open the hidden latch under the barn floor. By the third day, she started noticing how much Clyde had aged, not just in body but in spirit. He moved like a man dragging ghosts behind him. Why? Not just run. She asked him one night, sitting by the fire. Because Ellis don't let you run. He said, he follows, breaks what you leave behind. I run. He burns this ranch, hangs my name on a noose, and takes everything. Clara looked into the flames. Then we make our stand here. The next morning, a message arrived. A bullet in a burlap sack. No note. No name. Just a bullet. Clyde stared at it for a long time, then put it on the mantel like a warning. They're close now, he said. Could be 2 days. Could be tomorrow. Clara spent the evening preparing supplies, bandages, ammunition, canteens. She found herself standing in front of the mirror in the hallway, staring into her own face, then glancing at the photograph of the other Clara pinned beside it. Same eyes, same mouth, same look of stubborn fire. She whispered, I won't. Die silent. That night, as thunder rumbled again on the horizon, Clyde gave her a small box. Inside was a silver revolver engraved with roses on the barrel, and the initials CW. It was hers. He said softly, my daughter's. She learned to shoot. When she was 10, you got her fire. Clara wrapped her fingers around the handle, the cool metal fitting her hand like it had waited years to be held again. She didn't deserve what happened. Clyde said, no one does. Clara replied. He looked at her. You scared? Clara's jaw tightened. Not of them. They spent the night loading weapons, fortifying windows, checking the tunnels. A storm began to form in the distance, and Clara could feel the wind changing. War was coming to Branson Ranch. And this time, she wouldn't hide behind a man or a marriage. She'd stand, fight, and maybe, finally, become more than just someone's second chance. She'd become her own. By the time the sun began to slip behind the red hills, Branson Ranch stood ready. Clara stood on the porch, revolver strapped at her side, braid tucked beneath her hat, and fire in her blood. The easy life she had once dreamed of was long gone, replaced by something far more dangerous and far more real. From the tower of the barn, Clyde stared through his spyglass toward the eastern ridge. They're Coleman, he said grimly. Clara climbed up beside him. The horizon shimmered with heat, but through the wavering air, she saw them 5 riders. Black silhouettes against the gold sky, dust clouds trailing behind like smoke. Ellis Trent was at the front. Even from a distance, his crooked grin seemed to carry on the wind like a bad omen. 5, she asked. 5 now, Clyde said. More waitin'. Ellis always brings shadows. He handed her a long-range rifle. We don't shoot first. Let them step on our land. Make it clear this ain't a bluff. Clara nodded, gripping the rifle. Her hands didn't tremble anymore as the riders approached the gate. Clyde descended the barn steps with slow, deliberate steps, his hat pulled low and boots kicking up dust. Clara stayed high, watching every twitch of Ellis's fingers. Ellis reined in just shy of the main fence and gave a low whistle. Well, ain't this the prettiest grave I ever seen? Turn back, Clyde called. Ain't nothin' for you here but lead and regrets. Ellis laughed, dismounting smoothly. Come on, Clyde. After all we've been through, we both know how this ends. I ain't you anymore, Clyde said. I buried that man with my daughter. Ellis's eyes narrowed. Then maybe I should dig her up and ask if she forgives you. Clyde's jaw clenched. He took one step forward, then another. Clara's fingers tensed around the trigger. Ellis smiled. Don't worry. I ain't here to kill no wives today. Just take what's mine. You want money? Clyde said. It's gone. No, Ellis said, pointing to the house. I want what you built, what you tried to hide in. I want the whole damn ranch, and I want her. Clara's heart twisted as his eyes locked with hers through the barn window. I see her. Ellis growled. She's the spittin' image of your daughter, ain't she? Tell me, Clyde, how twisted are you now? Clyde reached for his revolver. Ellis raised a hand. Easy now. No need to spill blood unless you want to. But the moment was already broken. One of Ellis's men moved to quick, his hand darting toward his holster. A shot rang out, Clara's. The man fell backward off his horse, blood blooming across his chest. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted, like thunder cracking the sky. The ranch flared with muzzle flashes, and bullets tore into fences, posts, and walls. Clara ducked low, reloaded, and fired again. 1, 2, 3, each shot finding its mark. Clyde rolled behind a trough, returning fire with steady, controlled bursts. Ellis's men scattered, taking cover behind rocks and wagons. Clara saw one of them circle toward the rear barn entrance. Clyde, she shouted. They're flanking us. He nodded. Go. Take the tunnel if you have to. Clara didn't hesitate. She slid down the back of the barn, boots pounding against the dirt. She sprinted toward the hidden cellar door near the water barrels and yanked it open. Just as she disappeared into the darkness, bullets struck the ground behind her inside. She moved like memory guided her past the crates of dynamite, past the maps, through the tunnel that led beneath the field. She popped up on the other side. Near the windmill, behind the attackers, she leveled her rifle and fired. 2 more dropped before they even saw her. The fight didn't last long. Clara emerged covered in dust, sweat, and the weight of what she'd done. Clyde stood near the porch, hat off, breathing heavy. A shallow graze marked his arm, but he was alive. Ellis, wounded but not dead, was on his knees, hands raised. Clara approached slowly, revolver aimed at his heart. He laughed through the blood in his mouth. She's got your fire, Clyde. She's got more than that, Clyde muttered. She's got her own name, one you'll never speak again. Clara stepped closer, eyes sharp. Leave this land and never return. If I see your face again, I won't miss your heart. Ellis spat at the dirt. You Bransons got mean in your blood. I'm not a Branson, Clara said, lowering the revolver. Not by name, but this land, it's mine now. 3 days had passed since the smoke cleared at Branson Ranch. The wounded were buried, the bullet holes patched, the blood scrubbed from the porch. Ellis Trent was gone, driven off with a slug in his shoulder and the taste of defeat in his mouth. No one in Dust Creek had seen him since, though rumors whispered he'd crawled back across the border like a dog nursing shame. Clara May stood beneath the rising sun, boots planted on the cracked earth, watching the wind move through the tall grass like ghosts fading into peace. The rifle no longer shook in her hands. She didn't flinch at shadows anymore. The girl who'd once scrubbed floors and married for money was gone. Something stronger had taken her place. Clyde Branson sat on the porch, his arm bandaged, eyes distant. He hadn't spoken much since the shootout, just nodded when she walked by. Watched her like a man watching a storm pass over a dry field, relieved, amazed, and a little afraid. That morning, Clara brought him coffee and sat beside him. You built a good ranch, she said, softly. Clyde stared at the horizon. I built it for peace, but peace never stayed. She sipped her coffee. Maybe peace ain't something you build. Maybe it's something you protect, with your hands, if you have to. He glanced at her, a glint of pride in his tired eyes. You ain't the girl I married. No, she said. That girl wanted comfort. This one wants truth. Clyde nodded. Then take the truth. This land, this house, the cattle, it's all yours. Clara blinked. What? I changed the deed, he said. Before the fight, figured I might not make it out. You saved this place, Clara, not me. And it's time the land belonged to someone who earned it. She stared at him, emotions fighting behind her eyes. I didn't do this for ownership, I know. He said, That's why you deserve it. That evening, Clara opened the back room one last time. The photograph of the first Clara still sat on the table. She took it gently, wrapped it in cloth, and buried it beneath the big oak near the creek beside a new grave marker that read simply, Clara Branson, daughter, fighter, free. I didn't know you, she whispered, but I carried your name. Now I carry your fire. She placed the revolver, the one with the roses on the barrel, atop the grave. She won't need this anymore, she said aloud. But I will, for a while. Weeks passed. Clyde grew quieter, his cough deeper. The past had caught up with him, and he knew it. One night, he sat at the hearth, took her hand in his, and said, I never knew peace. Not really, until you came. You gave me something better than comfort. You gave me a reason to let go. He died in his sleep 2 nights later, under a blanket stitched with his daughter's initials. Clara buried him beside his daughter beneath the oak, and for the first time in Dust Creek history, folks came not for gossip but for respect. Even Miss Lulu cried that by summer's end, Clara ran the ranch herself. She hired riders, honest ones, paid fair, taught the girls in town how to shoot. She turned the old back room into a reading parlor filled with books and music. The cellar still held its secrets, but she kept it locked not to hide things, but to remember what could happen when truth stays buried too long. People came to know her not as the girl who married rich, but as the woman who fought, who survived, and who rebuilt. One day, a reporter from the Amarillo Post came riding out to write a piece. He asked her name. She looked him in the eye and said, Just Clara, that's enough. And so, the legend of Clara May Whitley, poor girl turned ranch queen, spread across Texas and beyond, not because she'd married for money, not because she'd fired a rifle, but because when the dust rose and the devils came, she stood her ground not as someone's wife or daughter, but as herself. And in the Old West, that meant more than gold. It meant freedom.